like to call to order the Monday, April 6th meeting of the St. Lawrence County Board of Legislators. Pursuant to the state of emergency, executive order number 202.1, article 7, suspension of a law allowing the attendance of meetings telephonically or other similar service. And due to the resignation of a former legislator, we are now at the number of 14 board members. As we start, I will need a motion to suspend the rules needed to allow the attendance of legislators telephonically and to add 2 resolutions, number 36 and 37, to the agenda. Is there a motion?
Don't move.
Rita? Is there a second?
I'll second, Joe.
By Kevin Akers and Dave Forsythe. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. A roll call, please.
Reagan.
He's waving his hand.
Reagan. Should I just mark him here?
He's talking to Dylan right now.
Jim, is your microphone muted?
Jim, I just unmuted you.
I'm calling him. Cal.
Reagan.
Yes.
Okay.
Forsythe.
He's here, but he's having trouble adding his video.
Dylan.
Yep.
Is everybody unmuted?
No, everyone's not right now. I'll work with Dave. He just doesn't have.
We're just not sure if we can mark him here. Can he hear us?
He can't hear us, he's on.
Well, we can record him here. He's visible.
I know, I just wondered if he could hear us.
Move on.
Lightfoot.
Here.
Sheridan.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Denisha.
Here.
Perkins. Akers.
Here.
Bay.
He's here.
Nance Arquette.
Here.
Burke.
He responded, but he couldn't hear.
Tony Arquette. Terminelli.
Here.
Curran.
Here.
13 present.
Thank you. Mr. Arquette is excused tonight. He is currently at work. We'll have the prayer by Legislator Denisha, please.
Thanks, Chairman. I would ask that everyone bow their heads, please. Dear Father in heaven, we are grateful for the opportunity to gather this evening, albeit at a distance. May we, who are merely inconvenienced, remember those whose very lives are at stake: the poor, the sick, the infirm, the homeless, the elderly, the very young, and all the brave men and women on the front lines of this epidemic, working tirelessly to stem the tide. May those of us who have the luxury of working from home remember those who no longer have jobs, those who are unable to make ends meet, and those whose businesses, both large and small, who are or will be unable to keep their doors open. Grant our leaders the strength, courage, and wisdom to guide our country through this terrible time. Let them cast aside politics so they are able to achieve the best outcome for all the people of our nation. Scripture, in the words of David from Psalm 46, reminds us, and I quote, "God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble." And this is as certain today as it was those many centuries ago. For all these things, we ask your blessing through your Son, Jesus Christ, through whom all things are possible. Amen.
Amen. I have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all.
This is Danny Fay. Do you hear my?
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda, and if you'd note that it will need to be amended. So can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Legislator Terminelli, seconded by
Sheridan.
Legislator Sheridan. All in favor?
Aye.
Sheridan.
Opposed? Carried. Now we need a motion to amend it. And if you have your agendas in front of you, we need to amend the agenda to remove item 21 from the agenda and to add 2 new resolutions, number 36 and number 37. Is there a motion to amend the agenda?
So move.
By Mr. Akers, seconded by Ms. Curran. Any discussion as to the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the March 2nd board meeting and the special board meeting on March 16th.
So move.
By Mr. Denisha, seconded by Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Communications, please.
A state of emergency proclamation dated March 18, 2020 was received from the town of Canton declaring the threat of coronavirus, specifically COVID-19, an imminent threat to the health and safety of residents in the town of Canton. And that state of emergency shall last for a period of 30 days. 3 resolutions were received from the town of Norfolk. 1, urging state lawmakers to review bail reform law. 2, repeal the green light law. And 3, support of the Second Amendment. A resolution was received from the town of Parrishville opposing the governor's budget proposal known as TED Part JJJ, amending the Article 10 citing process and removing local municipal input on the citing of renewable energy projects. The declaration of emergency dated March 16, 2020 was received from the town of Waddington, declaring the threat of coronavirus an imminent threat to the health and safety of residents of the town of Waddington. A resolution was received from the village of Waddington opposing any change in the county sales tax apportionment to local municipalities. For the following letters, copies in their entirety have been emailed to all legislators and will be included in the permanent record, with a summary being read this evening. A letter was received from Catherine L. Demo of Potsdam, in support of County Legislator Rick Perkins and his resolution opposing the governor's budget proposal known as TED Part JJJ. She asked the Board of Legislators and state legislators to step back and discuss further the effects such a bill means for the taxpayers and residents of our area. She said the bill should not be passed until the residents of Northern New York understand the ramifications of the bill. A letter was received from Leif Anderson of Fort Jackson asking the board to support the resolution opposing the governor's budget proposal, TED Part JJJ, and stating he would like to voice his support for the amendment of Article 10, which will keep local power and democracy intact when it comes to renewable energy projects. He said the local zoning laws and public discourse for future development are an important right that the residents should retain. A letter was received from Lucia Daly of Parishville, asking the legislators to defend our rights under the Constitution of the state of New York. She urges the Board of Legislators to oppose the Accelerated Renewable Energy Growth and Community Benefit Act, an amendment known as TED Part JJJ that was added to the recently passed state budget without legislative agreement or public review. A letter was received from Douglas and Lori Witherall of Parishville supporting the resolution opposing Governor Cuomo's TED Part JJJ bill introduced by legislator Rick Perkins. They stated that Governor Andrew Cuomo's last-minute Accelerated Renewable Energy Growth and Community Benefit Act, Article 23, 30-day budget amendment under the Transportation, Economic Development, and Environmental Conservation, TED bill, is unconstitutional, and they urge all St. Lawrence County legislators to vote to adopt the resolution in opposition to the governor's budget proposal. A letter was received from Richard Hayes Phillips of Canton in which he heard Governor Cuomo announce a list of policy initiatives we should all be proud of that were included in the budget bill that has already passed. His list concluded with the accelerated renewable energy siting. He said it appears that there never was a straight up or down vote on this oppressive and tyrannical legislation. It was tucked into the budget bill, which gets passed in its entirety under deadline pressure, with nobody understanding everything they vote on. The law would acquire, presumably through eminent domain, build-ready sites to be marked and sold to developers of major renewable energy facilities, thus relieving private corporations from having to negotiate leases or purchase from private landowners, would establish a set of uniform standard and conditions for siting, design, construction, and operation of major renewable energy facilities, thus preventing municipalities from doing so. Restrict consideration of municipal objections to those regarding lack of compliance with pre-existing local laws concerning the environment or public health and safety, with the express provision that general expressions of disagreement or opposition shall not be considered. Ensure that following a public comment period or a public hearing, a final siting permit shall be issued to the applicant. Require agreed parties to seek judicial review within 30 days pursuant to Article 78 proceedings, even though that very law for other purposes allows 4 months in which to file an appeal, and prevent other state agencies from requiring any approval, consent, permit, certificate, contract, agreement, or other conditions, and to prevent any municipality from doing so, provided only that the municipality be notified of the pending application. He urges county legislators to pass a resolution resisting this law.
Is that it? Thank you. I think that you were all supplied by way of email a copy of the correspondence that was just read. It's very interesting, pretty scary. I'd ask you all to take a good look at it, and if anybody wants to bring forward a resolution, let me know. Thank you. At this time, we'll have the coronavirus 19 update by Dr. Williams. Evening, doctor.
So I'm the,
There we go.
okay,
There you are.
good evening, everyone. So I'm the president of the Board of Health for the county, and I'm also the Associate Chief Medical Officer for St. Lawrence Health System and the Chief Medical Officer for the Community Health Centers of the North Country. So I've been involved with this on a few different angles. As everyone is aware, the county now has more than 60 cases confirmed of coronavirus. And we've been working very closely between public health and the local hospital and healthcare community to come up with a strategy to help to mitigate the spread of disease. We're really emphasizing the governor's pause executive order, asking people to socially distance and avoid unnecessary travel. From the perspective of the local hospital systems, we've all been working on creating surge plans to develop space to take care of patients when they do come into our hospitals. And this is for St. Lawrence Health System, but also with Claxon Hepburn. We all have staffing plans in order to deal with the significant changes and the significant potential burden on the healthcare system. And we've all worked very hard to come up with a sufficient supply of mechanical ventilators should patients become extremely ill and need that level of support. In coordinating with public health, we've also come up with some testing centers that are available throughout the community, both in Ogdensburg through Claxon Hepburn, but also in Canton, Potsdam, Messina, and Leavenworth. And the medical community has made a transition to a lot of telemedicine. So instead of having visits in the office, many of you may be contacting your primary care providers and your other providers through telemedicine. And we've also worked to collaborate with our regional healthcare partners. So we're in touch with the folks from Adirondack Medical, from Samaritan, and also from Alice Hyde to make sure that we understand not only how it's affecting our county, but how it's affecting our region. And then again, we're working to educate the community about the importance of really paying attention to the public health measures that have been implemented and trying to emphasize that although medical care is part of the treatment for COVID-19, the effective mitigation program are the public health measures that Dana and her team from the Department of Health. I think Dana may speak to this more specifically, but as we identify cases in the community, the public health department and their nurses are contacting the person who's been identified as having the illness, but then equally importantly, contacting the folks that have been in direct contact with and issuing appropriate orders in terms of quarantine or at times isolation if a patient should be symptomatic. Unfortunately, our community went from having one case of coronavirus not that long ago to having more than 60. I did pass along a map that was put out by a news organization that shows that, at least as of this morning, St. Lawrence County actually has the most rapidly growing coronavirus incidence in the entire state. We double the number of cases every 2.5 to 3 days, whereas New York City is currently doubling only every 6.5 days. So even though the number of cases are overall small, the rate of increase is very concerning. So, Dana and I are very interested in making sure that the community in general is really paying attention and is following the advice to socially distance, to avoid unnecessary travel, to avoid group gatherings and things like that. So there's been ongoing communication about that. And we've also been working with our educational institutions. I know there's been some concern about that, but both with the two SUNY schools, Clarkson and St. Lawrence, there's been ongoing communication to make sure that everyone's on the same page about what the appropriate response is to this pandemic. So that's sort of an overview.
Any questions? Comments?
I have a question for Dr. Williams.
Go ahead, Mr. Rager.
So Doctor, how are our communications with the 4 colleges going here now? Is it more open, more direct? Is it on a daily basis?
So I would say that it's been open and direct. It's a little bit different for each of the colleges. I think, and I'll let Dana speak to this. I feel like, we had some initial meetings and made some progress. I think there's a lot of concern about students coming back into the area from areas of high transmission. So we did come up with a plan for each of the colleges to appropriately quarantine and or isolate their students. I know they've worked hard to make that happen. And then we did facilitate some testing on the campuses so that people could so that the universities could identify any students who were infected and act appropriately.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Williams.
You're welcome.
Mr. Burke.
Good evening, Dr. Williams.
Good evening.
I wanted to know about the testing. It would appear that the social isolation may not be working as well as we'd like it to work. And it sounds like testing, a widespread testing might be the next best thing. What's your opinion on that?
Sure. So right now, everyone's heard quite a bit about testing and the limitations on the availability of testing. In this county, right now, we can perform testing through each of the hospitals, but there's some limited supplies. It's not so much that the test kits are limited, it's that the supplies to do the testing are limited. So there's a nasal swab that needs to be obtained or an oral swab, and that has to be transported in a special chemical medium. We actually collect the samples locally at the testing centers, but then we send them in, for St. Lawrence Health System, we actually send them to the Mayo Clinic. So although the sample is collected locally, it's actually sent off to what we call a reference lab, in this case, the Mayo Clinic. I think Claxon Hepburn may be using Wadsworth sometimes, and sometimes LabCorp, again, big reference labs. I'm saying testing because right now we're only really able to test people who have symptoms and who fall into certain categories. So, healthcare workers, EMS, people who've had a direct contact with a known case. So we're following the guidance from the CDC and New York State Department of Health on who can be tested. And we're not doing screening of asymptomatic people unless they have to be in a particular environment. If someone's in an ICF and has been exposed, if they're asymptomatic, we might do that. So if someone in a group home, but we're not doing widespread screening. As soon as and changes so we are testing, in-house testing, then what I'd like to see happen is for either the state to sponsor, the county to sponsor, or the hospitals to sponsor the sort of drive-through screening that you hear about in other communities. And that would be screening of people who don't have symptoms to really help us identify how prevalent the disease really is in the community. Right now, when we say we have, around 60 cases, those are just 60 cases that have been identified. There may be many more people who are asymptomatic.
All set, John?
I didn't answer, I apologize.
Mr. Burke, are you all set?
Could I have one follow-up, Joe?
Sure.
Dr. Williams, how far away are we from the new Abbott testing that gives results back in under 15 minutes? And I believe they have another one that gives results back in 6.5 hours. And they've, I don't know, I think I read that they're doing like 1 million of those a week. It would seem that either of those would be great alternatives to what we have now.
Absolutely. So Abbott, Cepheid, and BioFire are the 3 vendors who have come out with these rapid tests. Many of them announced this, several weeks ago. And as soon as they became FDA approved, the St. Lawrence Health System lab director and I got on the phone and talked to the folks from those vendors and put in a pre-order. But unfortunately, what happens is the CDC is directing where those test kits get sent. and they have a priority list. And we're higher on the priority list because we're in New York State, but we're a lot lower on the priority list than New York City, for instance. So we've already essentially sent them a money order and said, as soon as those tests are earmarked for St. Lawrence County, we want as many of them as we can get. So we're very aggressively, harassing these vendors to try and get the tests. But again, it's being regulated partly by the federal government, partly by the state government. So we'll get them as soon as the federal government and the state government allows.
Thank you.
Thank
Said, John? Mr.
Yes,
Forsythe. Mr. Forsythe. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Reagan, go ahead.
Can you hear me, Joe? Can you hear me?
Yes.
No.
go ahead, Dave.
Mr. Reagan, we can hear you.
Okay. Dr. Williams, I just wanted to thank you for serving the people of St. Lawrence County as on our Public Health Council, and for all your service during this time of emergency. It's wonderful that someone like you, who is involved in so many things, has still found time to assist St. Lawrence County and assist the people of St. Lawrence County. So thank you for your service.
Quite welcome.
Mr. Forsythe, you want to try it again? He can't hear me. Is there anyone else?
Joe.
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Nope.
Bruce?
You've got Sheriff on as well as Dana.
I beg your pardon?
You've got Sheriff on as well as Dana to speak.
Okay. Sheriff Bigwar? I don't see him. There he is. Sheriff, go ahead.
So just to talk about the jail a little bit, follow up. We had a inmate.
Question for you. Is there a question for Dr. Williams?
No, not for myself, no.
All right. Then let me have you stand by a minute. Doctor, thank you very much for your presentation. We really appreciate it. I thank you for taking the time today to speak with me at length. And we really do appreciate all that you are doing for us in the roles that you're playing here. So thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. It's an honor.
Okay. Now, is Dana McGuire on there?
She was.
She is. She's just radio's off.
There she is.
Okay, Dana, did you want to chime in now after the doctor spoke?
Unmute.
Unmute your microphone, Dana.
Let's try that again. Sorry about
There,
that.
that works.
I think Dr. Williams gave a great summary of where we are. And just like that's been mentioned, it's been great to work with him. We meet regularly to talk several times a day. So it's just great to have the help and to think through things that are kind of going on. But as you know, we have 63 cases. There are 4 people in the hospital. There were 5, so 1 has been discharged and he's back home doing well. We have 17 people who have come out of the isolation process. So again, isolation is the quarantine process for once you are positive. And so that doesn't work the same way as quarantine, because quarantine is usually 14 days from the last time you had contact with a positive person. But once you're positive, for you to come out of isolation, it has to at least be 7 days since the symptoms started. And you have to have 3 days with no fever, without taking medication, and your other symptoms have to be greatly reduced. So we have had 17 individuals in this case. We are finding difficulty with the isolation process and with the quarantine process. We have people who do not want to maintain, who will not give the contacts that we need to do all of the tracing. We have used Steve Button. We've used the sheriff for help, in that. And so we do need to have the public know that this is a serious process. Isolation and quarantine is very important. So I'd just like to say thank you to Steve and to the sheriff for the help, because we do have some cases that can kind of bring us off track, and it makes trying to keep on track and doing the investigations of the ongoing cases just to get done, because we can be kind of following one and kind of not getting anywhere. Last week, we did put up a map. So with the help of the planning office, we do map out the townships that do have the cases. We have gotten good feedback on this map. It is hard for us to do it through the weekend. So our department now is staffed 7 days a week, but we are at half staff on Saturday and Sunday. So we won't be doing that for the weekends. So it's nice, I think, that the community can see where the cases are, but I don't want people to feel like just having that map means that they don't have to pay attention. Just a second, please. That we don't have to pay attention to, what we need to be doing. So I think sometimes with having a map and having that information, it can be a false kind of a sense of security. So we need to have the same actions kind of regardless of where the cases are. We also have a separate map that we don't put out, where we actually map out all of the street addresses. And working with Dr. Williams, we use this to look at the clusters and all of the links. And so far, all of the cases almost are linked to each other. And so as they keep coming in, it's been very interesting just to see all of the pieces that kind of play into it. So that's been very helpful. We try to get a hold of people. We try to make quarantine and isolation just the most important piece, because that containment is what can help us to decrease the spread. Last week, we also started talking about a donation procedure for the county, so that if you had some supplies that you could donate, that the county would be a central location that those could be dropped off. So I know we've heard from some schools, from some of the colleges. And so I don't know if Matt or Ruth, you want to speak to where we are on that as well. But those are the activities that we have going on. And I continue to speak to the media, and we'll have more press releases. And I think just being more firm on staying home. I mean, this 2-week period, if we could just really try to shut down, unnecessary travel, we could really decrease this curve. But I mean, we have increased, really quickly, and we need to work on this.
Any questions for Dr. McGuire?
I have one, Joe.
Mr. Burke.
Dana, what is the interval in which a person is infectious before and after the symptoms appear?
So before the symptoms appear, I'm not technically sure. We are learning that you can spread the virus, but I don't know what the research is on that. The incubation period from when the symptoms do start is 14 days. So when we say that someone needs quarantine because they've been in contact with a positive person, that's the 14 days since the last contact from that person. So if I was in contact with you on Friday and you're positive, my 14-day window starts on Friday. So we may not contact you until now. So that might take off a few days, but that incubation period for that new person that had contact would be 14 days.
Thank you.
All set? Anyone else?
Joe, I have a question.
Go ahead.
We've got a lot of summer residents, seasonal residents that are coming back to the North Country earlier than they normally would. I know Lewis County, I believe they put out some literature recommending or requesting people to contact the Board of Health and to voluntarily do the 14-day quarantine if they're coming back in. There's absolutely no teeth to that. And I'm just wondering, Dana, and I guess this would be a question for the sheriff as well. If would it behoove us to do the same thing, to put out a statement? I guess the only reason I question the validity of it, if there's no teeth to it, but is there something that we can do to, I think a lot of people are not taking this seriously enough. And if there's no consequences, it's going to be difficult to get anybody to comply.
So we have had 2 or 3 press releases that do ask people if you're coming back to our county. So we don't even specify where you're coming from, but if you're coming back to our county, that you do the self-isolation. And, you know, I don't know how well that's going over. I know when it's the formal process, we have really struggled with a few people. And so we have made that recommendation. We've made that recommendation if you have symptoms and they're not bad enough, you know, that you couldn't stay at home, that you should self-isolate. I mean, once you start to see the symptoms of the coronavirus, you know, which we all know, you know, what they are, that you should start to self-isolate. And it's difficult to know if that's what has been done, but that is the recommendation. And so it can be just because you have symptoms, it can be because you've traveled. So if you've come back into this county, that is what we've made for the recommendation.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Forsythe, you want to try it one more time? You can't hear me.
I think you can.
Is your mic?
He unmuted
No.
before.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, Dana.
No, Nicole has a question.
Nicole, you've got a question?
Yes. Hi.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I'm just wondering about contractors coming into the area. I know we have a couple of different pretty large projects going on. How does that work with our contractors that are coming in and out, or workers that may be coming in and out of the county?
So as long as you're an essential worker, you know, you should be maintaining the 6 feet of distance, and that's all the guidance that we have. So there is a list of who can be working. You know, I'm not so sure about contractors and things, but with regard to isolation and quarantine with those who have been positive, we have had healthcare workers and then some other workers that feel that they're essential. And we actually ask them to let their supervisor know. Their supervisor contacts us, and then we have their supervisor tell us that they're essential, because those people who have been exposed to the virus or who have been positive and now are not showing signs can go back to work, but you must be essential. And that list is on the website for New York State. And some people want to be working, and that is not essential. So I think same goes for contractors and things. You have to be essential, and then you have to be mindful. You know, if you have been exposed and things like that, you should be wearing a mask and maintaining that 6 feet.
Thank you. Mr. Forsythe, let's try it again.
Here we go.
Give it a shot, Dave. Can you hear?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah.
It just keeps cutting out. I gave you for like a half. I think
Yeah,
it's
you're
my
good
internet
now.
or something.
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Dr. Williams?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one additional comment. First of all, Dana's doing a tremendous job and should be congratulated for that. My other comment was there's this issue of asymptomatic, and I think one of the folks had a question. There's a real concern that there are asymptomatic people who are able to spread the illness. And there's some documentation of people called super spreaders, so basically people who have no symptoms, but are actually able to spread the illness to multiple people. And I think the reason it's important to understand that is that's where the social distancing and the no inessential travel comes in. So If people were to follow that, then it wouldn't cause a problem. But because people are unaware, and especially younger people and healthier people are more likely to be an asymptomatic case, they could walk around, they could come to work, they could interact with people and spread the illness without even being aware that they themselves were ill. So I think that's a very important factor. And the CDC is now leaning toward and is actually recommending what people call universal masking. So there's been a lot of seesawing back and forth about whether people should wear masks in public. One of the fears is that people will take away necessary medical equipment by purchasing medical masks. But at this point, the recommendation really is that if people are out in public, they should cover their face either with a mask that's homemade, contractor mask or something like that. And the idea of that is not so much that it prevents the person wearing the mask from getting the disease, but that if one were asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic, that you would prevent spreading the disease to others. So I think that's an important thing for people to understand.
And I would,
Okay, just a minute. Legislator Forsyth wants to pose a question, and he wants to ask, based on the speed of cases in 10 to 12 days, will we be able to spare ventilators?
So that's an important question. As people may be aware, there's been some suggestion from the governor's office about essentially confiscating ventilators from quote unquote upstate. We're not all certain what upstate means, whether that's Poughkeepsie or what, but we St. Lawrence Health System and I believe Claxon Hepburn have spent a tremendous amount of effort building up the resources that we need to take care of people in this community. And one of the key resources that we've worked on is mechanical ventilators. So through St. Lawrence Health System, I was able to take us from having 4 ventilators to having about 30. So we're not especially eager to get rid of those ventilators. So we're basically working with the governor through the Hospital Association of New York State to determine what resources we really could truly share and contribute, and trying to make sure that we reserve enough of the ventilators and other resources for our community.
Thank you. Legislator Curran, did you have your hand up before? Rita?
No, I'm just doing a couple things on the side here while I'm listening.
Okay.
But I wanted
Any
to
other?
say thank you. Can I say thank you to Dr. Williams and Dana? You guys are doing a lot of work. One of the problems we have with the cases spreading, I think, is there's just a lot of people out still in public. Like you go by and people have 10, 15 cars at their house still.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Dr. Williams while he's here? Okay, thank you again, Doctor. Sheriff Bigworth.
There he is.
There you are. How's things with you?
So just an update on the roadside. We are, everybody's talking about the violations or the concerns of people not following the directives. We are still handling calls for that. We will continue to. I can tell you we've gotten calls about funeral homes, the Amish, certain businesses, and we're checking every one of them, make sure they're complying. And right now we're still in the education phase. I know someone talked earlier about a news release, and maybe and the county attorney can add to this, but we're getting a joint news release out there with a little stronger language and kind of spelling out the civil and criminal penalties for anybody that's really kind of not following the directives. I think it's come to that point where the next couple of weeks here in our county, even though maybe New York City has plateaued out, I don't know if that's evident yet, but I don't think that we've plateaued out, and I don't think we're even at the apex. And I think people are taking maybe the news from New York City and mixing it up for St. Lawrence County. And my fear is that people are going to loosen up and kind of go out more and do more things, when now more than ever the next 2-3 weeks in St. Lawrence County, to be the time where we tighten things up and really social distance, and stay away from each other and do all the things the directives are talking about. So the sheriff's office is still educating everybody out there that's in violation. We're hoping we don't go any further, but we're going to put a news release out there that kind of gives a little stronger directive and spells out some of the things that could occur if they continue to violate, because obviously it's for the betterment of all citizens if everybody follows the directives. And I am going to probably add to that. I know the county attorney got this a little further on. I'm going to put out there a no unnecessary travel advisory under the sheriff's auspice, and maybe hopefully that'll get this where or fall a little bit more.
I did it one.
Any questions for the sheriff?
Ms. Terminelli.
Mr. Terminelli?
Hi, Sheriff Bigworth. What would be your recommendation if we do see people gathering, or if there is somebody that people know has tested positive and they are out circulating?
Yep. So obviously we're still operating 24/7. You can call our main line 379-2222 or the EOC
Okay,
number.
what do I do now? Just
39
follow the link.
3970. And those we'll take all the complaints. We take everything seriously. Whoever
I'm
reports
starting to hear it a little bit. I
check
moved
on them all.
downstairs and I got my hand on it.
So
I just don't.
if anybody
think
out
I
there
got break.
has any
My son's
complaints,
telling me
someone not following the
go out
directives,
and come back
make sure
in.
they just call our office and we'll follow.
If I go back out, will you let me back in? All right. All right. I'm going to sign up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Sheriff.
You're welcome.
All right. We will move on now to the presentation of resolutions, and we'll start with Mr. Denisha.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign the multi-jurisdictional all hazard mitigation grant program and modifying the 2020 budget for emergency services. Move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Ms. Curran. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, we gotta have a roll call on this one. My mistake.
Nancy Arquette,
You want mute? No.
Nancy?
Yes.
Okay.
Burke,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe. Okay. Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Leader,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
12 yes, 2 absent.
Resolution passes. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution declaring April Sexual Assault Awareness Month and move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Ms.
Second.
Terminelli and Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No opposed. Carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution granting approval of bad debt write-off for the probation department and move for its adoption.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Fay and Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Burke,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe, Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Leader,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
No.
Fay,
Yes.
Arquette,
Yes.
11 yes, 1 no, 2 absent.
Resolution is carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution modifying the 2020 budget for governmental services to utilize funding from the New York State Unified Court System for the installation of carpeting in multiple areas of the courthouse and move for its adoption.
For a second. By Ms. Arquette and Ms. Curran. Any discussion? All in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Roll
Okay,
call.
it's another roll call.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe, Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Leader,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Arquette,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
12 yes, 2 absent.
Resolution is carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution proclaiming Earth Day in St. Lawrence County and move for its adoption.
Seconded by Ms. Terminelli, Mr. Akers, and Ms. Curran. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any opposed? Carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution designating April 2020 as Fair Housing Month and move for its adoption.
Is there a second?
Rita.
By Ms. Curran, Ms. Terminelli. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Any opposed? Carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution modifying the 2020 budget for the Planning Office for the Transportation Program and move for its adoption.
For a second. By Ms. Arquette and Ms. Curran and Ms. Terminelli. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Leader,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Arquette,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
13 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution is carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution designating April 2020 as Census Month in St. Lawrence County and move for its adoption.
For a second. By Mr. Burke, Ms. Terminelli, and Ms. Curran. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract for a SFY 2020-2021 Live Scan Equipment Program Grant from the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services and modifying the 2020 budget for the Sheriff's Office and move for its adoption.
There's a second. Second by Ms. Curran and Mr. Forsythe. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Reagan,
Yes.
Foresight,
Yes.
Lightfoot.
Yes.
Sheridan. Bill Sheridan,
Yes.
Leader,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Arquette,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
13 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution is carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution opposing fiscal year 2021 executive budget legislation amendments to the Transportation Economic Development and Environmental Conservation Bill, known as TED New Part JJJ, specifically the portion amending the Article 10 siting process and removing local municipal input on the siting of renewable energy projects, and move for its adoption.
For a second. Second by Mr. Akers, Mr. Sheridan. Any discussion? Seeing none, all.
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Burke,
No.
What was,
Mr. Burke, did you want to speak?
Oh, yes, I do. Joe, I wanted to ask Steve a question about this, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Steve, what's the of this resolution now that it's law?
Mr. Burke, as I believe you're aware, the TED Part JJJ did pass as a part of the New York State budget this year. It has now been signed into law. It is valid as it stands right now. The passage of the resolution calling on the governor to actually not enact it, unfortunately, may be a day late.
Just a comment, Joe?
Any suggestions? Can we withdraw it?
Yes, it did.
Last thing?
At this point, I believe it would be.
Okay, the county attorney is saying that probably the wisest thing to do at this stage of the game would be to withdraw it. So would there be from the floor a motion to withdraw this resolution?
I think it has to be sponsored.
It has to
No.
be sponsored,
Larry.
Larry, you sponsored it.
Can you
as did
withdraw?
Mr. Perkins.
Larry,
No.
Yeah, I would,
would you
I would
withdraw
not, I would not
your?
offer I would not withdraw it.
You would not withdraw it, okay. Well, it's still on the table, John.
If
I would offer a resolution to withdraw it.
Well,
Sorry.
all right. Is there a second to that motion to withdraw the original motion? Seconded by Ms. Terminelli.
That's not,
Are we doing this the right way?
no, sir.
I don't think that worked right.
No, sir.
I don't think that worked right. You got a motion and a second from Larry, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Did anyone? I think we gotta move on that, don't we?
You had 2 seconds.
Yeah, Bill and Kevin.
All right, then we have a motion by Larry. We have a second discussion. Mr. Perkins first.
Yes, I'd like to offer an amendment to this resolution asking the legislation to reconsider this TED bill.
Is there a second to that amendment?
I would second that.
Seconded by Mr. Denisha. Any discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the
Yes.
amendment?
No.
Yeah, go ahead, Nancy.
Please note that I will be recusing myself from this vote.
Yes.
Is there any
I'd
further
speak, Joe.
discussion? Is there any further
Yes.
discussion? Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
You know, this bit, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. This bill, it was released in Governor Cuomo's 30-day amendments to the executive budget. It didn't get time to be properly addressed by the public. I think it was snuck through. It is wrong. It is taking the home rule of the local townships away from them to do their local laws, providing for the safety and general welfare of the people. I think it's wrong for him to be pushing this down everybody's throat. I'm not against renewable energy, but the way this is going on, to change this process, to not give the local people a say is wrong. So I urge everybody to support this resolution.
Anyone else? Mr. Burke?
Yes, I'm confused. I'm wondering what resolution are we supporting, because there's an amendment into it. I'm a little confused.
Yes, supporting the amendment for asking them to reconsider, because it's wrong. I mean, you heard a lot of what the comments were on the earlier in the meeting from the correspondence. There's so many things wrong with this that we don't get to say in the pilot agreements. If a decision hasn't been done on the renewable energy siting within a year, it's already deemed approved. There's a lot of issues, and we're taking a lot of farmlands away, tillable lands. It just doesn't make sense.
So we're considering the motion, and I'll get to the hands up in a second. We're considering a motion to reconsider the bill in which this Ted New Park JJJ is included. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, now Mr. Akers had his hand up.
Yeah, Mr. Perkins is entirely 100% correct. This bill, not in the dead of the night, but in this era of the pandemic, has slipped through without any discussion whatsoever, input. And you've seen from the letters, the calls, and the emails that all of us have gotten about how upset the citizens are. And this is to fulfill a goal of, I believe, to have 70% of our energy by, and I think in 10 years, coming from renewables, which I believe is almost impossible with the current technology we have. We've lost 150 acres within 4 miles of my house, and it's going to be ongoing. We're enduring through Farm Bureau. We're trying to encourage farmers who are struggling for income right now to get these energy companies to put these solar developments or whatever on land that is not actually tillable. Well, you know, if you're in construction and you've got a nice level field with no obstacles and it's all cleared and the roadways are going to it, that's where you're going to put the solar panels. You're not going to go up on top where you're going to have to drill into rocks to anchor them, and then plus be further away from the three-phase line. So I think this will be challenged. I don't know where the resources are going to come from. That this needs to be challenged in court about the constitutionality of it. If anything, people should have the rights to protect their own property in their communities, the adverse consequences that this law could have. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wants to, Mr. Forsyth?
Yeah, I agree with Rick and Kevin also. It isn't right, Rick, and it's absolutely true. My question is, Nance, you were accusing yourself on this and several of the last votes. I guess I need a more specific reason for why, if you could help me out with that.
Certainly, Dave. I am an employee of the DEC, so anything that is conservation related specifically and having to do with my position on the Ready Commission. So I have certain recusals that I have to follow through with.
So if I can follow up.
Go ahead.
So the people that you represent, I don't know if you're doing it to the best of your ability in that case. I'm not sure of that.
I think, Dave, that's a conversation for another time.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Forsyth.
Okay, so are there any other, before I recognize Mr. Burke, anybody that hasn't spoken yet? Go ahead, Mr. Burke. Wait a minute, Ms. Terminelli.
I'm just wondering if we are going to ask them to reconsider the bill or the law that's now in effect. Are there certain considerations that we should suggest that they make in the resolution, as opposed to just reconsidering all of it? Are there particular points that constituents would like stressed?
Mr. Perkins.
Yes. Yes. Ms. Terminelli, under the previous Article 10 process, that was a process the governor put in place to streamline the renewable energy process. It gave the townspeople a chance to speak on the siting board and to create local laws. What I'm asking is basically to keep it as the original Article 10 process, which was mainly done to streamline the process to begin with. And here it is now, this new process is taking all the say away from all the people as far as where it's going to be, how it's going to be done, the pilots, there's no say at all. So I'm asking to go back to the original Article 10 process.
Anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sheridan.
I could vote for the resolution as originally presented, or I could vote for the amendment. Either way, the reason is that I will be voting in favor of the resolution because I strongly am a supporter of home rule legislation. I think the general feeling of the people who are in my district is that they're not in favor of any measure dreamed up by New York State Legislature that further erodes our local decision-making process. And I think we need less bigger government interference and not more. And so I will be voting either way, which whether it's for the to reconsider motion or to send it as it's been written.
Okay, so we're still on the amendment. Mr. Burke?
Well, I guess here are the alternatives we have. We can make a political statement and say that we're not in favor of Albany's heavy hand, or we can make adjustments to the request from the state. I mean, it's water over the dam. The legislation has been enacted. I do agree with Kevin. I think we have to protect valuable agricultural land, and I think that's a very reasonable request to ask in view of the legislation that's already been passed. So I guess, for me, we can all complain about what Albany's doing, but it's not going to change the fact that it's already done. And the likelihood of getting anything changed is probably slim to none if we take a stance that smacks of being political. And again, I'm not for or against. I'm not trying to speak out in favor of the governor, but I am concerned about global warming, and I commend anybody who tries to fight it, not at the expense of prime agricultural land. So I won't vote for the amendment unless it's clearly delineated or the amended resolution unless it's clearly delineated what we're asking for.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes. To me, John, it's not water over the bridge already, over the dam, I guess. When the wind companies first came to the Parrisville Hopkinton area, I was all for them. I agreed with the climate change and all that, but as time went on and I learned, wind towers do not make up the renewable energy for what it costs in carbon footprint to put them up. It just doesn't make up for it. Now, as far as solar or hydro, yes. But when it comes to the wind, it does not. And it also puts people at risk, their health and well-being. And that's why I'm against this right here. And I guess when I'm reconsidering this is asking them to go back to the current Article 10 process, what they had in place before, which gives us home rule, gives us the ability to create our local laws for the safety of the people, also to make our own pilot agreements. In this right here, we don't get to make pilot agreements. NYSERDA gets to decide what it is for whoever it is. So that's what I'm asking for, is for it to reconsider and to go back to the Article 10 process as it originally was.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a statement.
Go ahead, Mr. Anisha.
Thank you. The legislation that was passed, the thing that I find the most distressing is removing local municipal input on the siting. I am in favor of renewable energy. Whether it's wind or whether it's solar, hydro. We have to take a hard look at renewable energy. However, I cannot support bypassing local municipalities, local input from the folks that are going to be directly affected by it. I think that's wrong. I just I don't agree with it.
Anyone else?
One last thing, please. Yeah,
Mr. Perkins.
I don't see this as politically challenging or anything in that sort. I think it's right and wrong. This was produced 30 days before the budget was to be done. Then we have this pandemic going on, and it gets pushed through without any ability for legislators to talk about it. It just got shoved through. That's where I think this is wrong. We need to have a voice. That's what the system is for, is to have a voice, not to be just slammed down our throat. And I don't care who it is. Thank you.
Anyone else? We have an amendment to the resolution, the amendment being that if passed, this board would ask the governor's office and the legislature to reconsider the passage of this law and to revert back to the original intent of the Article 10 procedures that have been in place, that this replaces. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, roll call, please. On the amendment, roll call.
Forsythe,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan, Bill Sheridan,
Yes.
Leader,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Arquette,
Recused.
She recused herself.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Arquette,
We're voting on the amendment, Nancy.
Okay, I apologize. My screen froze, so I apologize.
Okay.
Again, on the resolution, I will have to recuse myself due to my employment with the DEC. Thank you.
Burke,
No.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
11 yes, 1 no, 1 recuse, 1 absent.
Okay, the amendment to the resolution passes. Now to the amended resolution. Is there any further discussion on the amended resolution? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Mr.
Aye.
Burke? You're
Yes.
opposed? Okay.
Yes.
Are you recusing yourself on this vote too, Nancy?
On any of the votes that have to do with this resolution, yes.
Well, yeah, but you're gonna have to do them individually. You can't have a blanket,
Okay,
rec-
yes, I will be recusing myself from this vote on
All
this.
right. Thank you. You got the vote? Oh, all right. So the resolution passes. Moving right along, Mr. Sheridan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign contracts and modifying the 2020 budget for community services for funding received from the Office of Mental Health, OMH, to St. Lawrence County as passed through funding to approved agencies, and I move for its adoption.
Rita.
Your second. Second by Mr. Britt. And the dog.
Yeah, sorry.
Any
there's someone
discussion?
walking by.
Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Leader,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Arquette,
Oh, yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Just skip me, Kelly.
Dave Forsythe,
Yes, please.
13 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution is carried. Mr. Sheridan?
Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution giving authorization to create new accounts for health home care and modifying the 2020 budget for community services, and I move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Mr. Akers, Ms. Curran, and Mr. Perkins. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Leader,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers, Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Arquette,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
13 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution passes. Mr. Sheridan.
Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign contracts for services for the preschool special education program in the Public Health Department, and I move for its adoption.
Second by Ms. Curran and Ms. Terminelli. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Sheridan.
Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution proclaiming April 6th through 12th, 2020 as National Public Health Week, and I move for its adoption.
Seconded by Mr. Akers, Ms. Terminelli, and Ms. Curran. Any discussion?
Could I have my name added to that? Sorry.
As a
Yes.
sponsor? Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Sheridan.
Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution giving approval of rates for related services for the preschool special education program, and I move for its adoption.
Seconded by Ms. Curran and Ms. Terminelli. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Sheridan.
Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with pathologist Dr. Scott Lapointe for the coroner program. Move for its adoption.
Seconded by Mr. Akers, Ms. Terminelli, and Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Sheridan.
Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution authorizing county department heads to sign confidentiality agreements with the Enhanced Multidisciplinary Team, EMDT, to refer clients for EMDT services. Move for its adoption.
Seconded by Ms. Terminelli. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Sheridan.
Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Unite USA, Inc., DBA Unite US, to allow the Office for the Aging to be listed as a referral source on the Unite US platform, and move for its adoption.
Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Curran. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Denisha.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Barton and LaJudas for professional engineering services for the Northumberland Street Bridge over Morristown Bay project, bin 3341380, and move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Mr. Forsythe, Ms. Curran. Any discussion? I would like to be added to that as a co-sponsor, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Wait a minute. Nancy, I'm sorry, Nancy.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, due to my position on the READY project, I am going to be recusing myself from this resolution.
So noted. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any opposed? Carried. Mr. Denisha.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the issuance of a negative declaration related to the SJ03 Northumberland Bridge project in Morristown, New York. Move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Mr. Akers, Ms. Curran. Any discussion? I would also like to be added to this resolution as a co-sponsor. Ms. Arquette?
Yep, again, this is also a READY project, so I will be recusing myself due to my position on this project.
So noted. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Denisha.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with the Franklin County Highway Department for road salt. Move for its adoption.
Seconded by Mr. Akers and Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Mr. Manelli.
Just a quick question for Don. I'm just wondering, I know that he said that we contracted with Franklin County in order to get a better bid price. Have we ever branched out and included any other counties in that bid to see if we could get an even better deal on that?
Who are you directing that to?
To Don.
To Don, to who?
Don
Oh,
Chambers.
all right. Hi, Don.
Hi, yes, we have reached out to other counties such as Jefferson and Lewis, and they do not wish to join our cooperative.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Don. Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution modifying the 2020 budget for the Department of Highways for bridge maintenance and repair. Move for its adoption.
Is there a second by Mr. Akers, Ms. Terminelli, and Ms. Curran? Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Leader,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Farquhar,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yeah,
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
13 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution is carried. Mr. Denisha?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution modifying the 2020 budget for the Highway Department for federal pass-through projects and move for its adoption.
Seconded by Mr. Akers, Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Farquhar,
Yes.
Burke,
Yeah.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
yes,
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Leader,
Yes.
13 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution is carried. Mr. Akers?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Environmental Systems Research Institute, Inc. to provide 2 ARCIS licenses and annual maintenance agreement and modifying the 2020 budget for the real property tax office. I move this resolution.
Is there a second by Ms. Curran and Mr. Perkins? Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Farquhar,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
yes,
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Leader,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
13 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution is carried. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with the New York Environmental Protection and Spill Compensation Fund regarding a tax delinquent property owned by Homestead Dairies, Inc. I move this resolution.
There's a second. By Ms. Curran, Mr. Perkins. Any discussion? Ms. Arquette?
Yes, because this resolution will lead to contract with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, I will have to recuse because of employment.
So noted. Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with New York Environmental Protection and Spill Compensation Fund regarding tax delinquent properties owned by Stanley Smith Estate. I move this resolution.
There's a second. By Mr. Perkins, Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Ms. Arquette?
Again, this is a DEC related resolution, and because of employment, I will be recusing myself from this vote.
So noted. Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign an amended memorandum of understanding with Norfolk Bakery LLC to collect delinquent taxes. I move this resolution.
Is there a second? By
Rita.
Mr. Burke, Mr. Perkins, and Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Mr. Akers?
I will support the resolution. I'm a bit reluctant. We've had other agreements with this business and their failure to follow through. And I'm somewhat convinced that there's language in this that will allow for this to take place, and it's a second chance. So I will support it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Forsythe?
I didn't vote for this in committee. I won't be voting for it again for the reasons before. I believe we gave them one chance, and we don't do this for many other businesses, so I won't support it.
Anyone else? Ms. Arquette?
Yes, I spoke to this at the last meeting. I am not in opposition to them paying the taxes that they owe, and I'm not in opposition to this contract. However, in light of social distancing and the COVID response across New York State and in St. Lawrence County, many businesses had to close due to slowdown in business. The Norfolk Bakery is one that is included in that list. As of this weekend, they have closed their doors. So again, I'm not in opposition to the contract, but I wonder if it wouldn't be prudent of us to give an extension to perhaps June 1st or July 1st so that they could get their doors back open, get sales started so that they can pay this bill.
Anyone want to respond to that? Mr. Burke?
I believe in committee that Steve had indicated that it probably would be June or July anyways. Steve, maybe he could comment.
Anyone else? Ms. Curran?
Yes, given the fact that they're closed right now, even if we give them to June or July, I mean, who knows when people are going to be able to open again, and then who knows what donut sales are going to be like. If we're going to give other people an extension on their payments at all, then maybe they need more than June or July to, I don't know. This is a hard one.
Mr. Akers?
No extension has been given. I know that Mr. Denisha and I know Ms. Curran and Ms. Arquette had sent around a discussion point, and we responded. And I think Ms. Terminelli weighed in, at least with the quarterly payment, and if that's what you're referencing, We had only been off work, I think Nicole mentioned 7 days. It was approximately 2 weeks. And certainly for those that are making quarterly payments, we may have to make an adjustment on the second quarter because of this pandemic. This business here, there's a history behind it. So, when it comes down to it, the agreement is made. I think Steve was talking about the agreement being made in June. We can take steps then to address it. But certainly in light of their history and the payments that they've made, I'm not ready at this point in time to make any additional concessions. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Mr. Forsythe.
Just to follow up on that point by Kevin, I was just watching the news earlier. I believe it was Jefferson County's predicting or thinking that sales tax may go down by upwards of $10 million. I think they were talking. This could be huge. A couple months here with slumping sales, no cars being sold. I'm just scared what's coming down the road here. So tighten our belts, I guess.
Thank you. We'll go to Ms. Curran. Excuse me, Ms. Arquette.
It may not be a popular amendment, but I would like to offer an amendment that we change the date of commencement from May 1st to June 1st, just to give them enough time to hopefully get back on their feet, get some sales in before they start making payments.
Is there a second to the amendment? Mr. Burke? Seconded by Mr. Burke. Any further discussion on the amendment? Would you restate it, Nancy?
Yes, it says that the contract, I believe, commences on May 1st, 2020, but I'm hoping that we can make an amendment to commence it on June 1st, 2020.
Okay, that's the amendment you're offering to June 1st, 2020.
Yes.
Okay, and it's seconded. Mr. Akers.
Mr. Burke seconded it, but yes, as far as discussion on the amendment, I would be fine with the 30 days. There are provisions in that 2 trillion, the CARE Act, for businesses that have gone out of business, and it's keeping track of payroll, mortgage payments, tax payments, and all that thing. I mean, it really hasn't been filtered out yet, but it seems to be quite extensive. My son has a business and he's been working for it. And actually, I think one of the provisions is that if you hire back all your employees and you go for either 8 weeks or 90 days, this loan actually becomes a grant. So, I mean, the details have to be worked out, but I think there'll be provisions in there, to take care of business that for things that are this pandemic's beyond their control. But having a soft heart, I will be amenable to moving that date to June.
Anyone else? I think you will find also that card, or what do they call it?
CARE.
CARE?
CARES.
CARE, whatever it is.
Yes.
Includes not only salaries, but their day-to-day bills, and those bills include taxes that they'd be forgiven. The amount borrowed would be forgiven at the end of the time period of the loan. So anybody else on the amendment to the resolution? Okay, all in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Who's the other aye?
I was.
Mr. Forsythe and Lightfoot. The amendment is carried. Now to the amended resolution. Is there any further discussion on the amended resolution? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Mr. Forsythe and Mr. Lightfoot. The resolution is carried. Mr. Akers.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution setting the allocation algorithm for workers' compensation plan participants for 2021, 2022, and 2023. I move this resolution.
Seconded by Ms. Curran, Mr. Forsyth. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a confidential agreement with PROACT to provide confidential information to US-RX Care. I move this resolution.
There's a second by Mr. Perkins, Mr. Burke, Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a letter of acceptance with Redlich Horowitz Foundation to cover costs associated with foster parent certification and modifying the 2020 budget for social services. I move this resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Burke and Mr. Sheridan. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Akers,
Aye.
Betty,
Aye.
Barquette,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yes.
Lightfoot.
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Leader,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
13 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution is carried. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution amending resolution number 24-2020, bank depositories and investment of county funds. I move this resolution.
Seconded by Ms. Curran.
Right.
Forsythe. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Reagan?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to introduce a resolution supporting capital off-track betting corporations' efforts to allow sports wagering at all duly licensed and regulated off-track betting branch facilities, and requesting that the New York State Legislature and Executive pass legislation allowing off-track betting corporations to offer sports wagering. And I introduce the resolution.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Burke and Mr. Perkins. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Excuse me. Yes, Mr. Reagan. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Don Hooper, who serves on the state or on the off-track betting corporation's board of directors as our county's representative, asked me to ask the board to support this resolution as a way to help increase revenues to St. Lawrence County. Regardless of what we think of sports wagering, if the state is going to legalize it in casinos and other locations across the state, I think it's important that our interests also be protected and that the residents of St. Lawrence County get their fair share of any revenues that are received by OTB and to help reduce the property tax here in St. Lawrence County. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Terminelli?
I will have to, yeah, I'll have to recuse myself from this vote. I do have family members that receive compensation from off-track betting.
So noted.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Anybody opposed?
Nay.
Mr. Fay.
Leader or Fay?
Is it Mr. Leader?
Leader.
Or Mr. Fay? Leader, I'm sorry.
Leader.
Mr. Akers.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the filling of vacancies and modifying the 2020 budget for probation. I move this resolution.
Is there a second? By Ms. Curran and Mr. Forsythe and Mr. Terminelli. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Fay?
Yes.
Arquette?
Yes.
Burke? Burke?
Yes.
Terminelli?
Yes.
Curran?
Yes.
Reagan?
Yes.
Forsythe?
Yes.
Lightfoot?
Yes.
Sheridan?
Yes.
Leader?
Yes.
Denisha?
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
Akers?
Yes.
13 yes, 1 absent.
Resolution is carried. Ms. Arquette, would you mind moving this resolution?
Certainly. I would like to move a resolution, Mr. Chairman, to reappoint a Democratic Commissioner of Elections, Jenny Bacon.
Is there a second? By Mr. Terminelli and Mr. Perkins. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Forsythe.
Mr. Chair, I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with PROAC Inc., extending the contract for pharma benefit management for St. Lawrence County. Move for its adoption.
Is there a second? By Mr. Perkins and Ms. Curran. Any discussion? Ms. Terminelli.
Just a question, as that we don't have the resolution in front of us to refer to. Is this just an extension on the current contract as it is?
Can we have Donna speak to that? She's on. She's over here. Donna's right there. She's.
Yeah, go ahead. Jenny,
So, yeah,
respond to
I
that,
can
please.
speak to that. Sure. So currently the county has a contract with Provide Pharmacy Benefit Management through May 31st, 2020. An RFP was sent out on January 17th, 2020. The Healthcare Committee met on March 27th to review the RFPs. There were 6 vendors that responded, which included PROACT and Access. Factors such as discounts, rebates, administration fees, dispensing fees were all compared between the 6 vendors. PROACT's proposal provided the largest savings, which is approximately $1,574,000 over a 3-year period. So this represents approximately a 10.79% savings. So this was almost double the amount of any other proposal that we got. So PROACT proposed 3-year contract and also allowed a 2-year market check where basically in 2 years into our 3-year contract, they'll let us go back out to bid to check and make sure that they're still competitive. And if anybody else comes in with a better pricing, they'll match that. Also, we go with PROACT. It allows for no membership disruptions and continued coordination with CannaRx. And then if we actually sign with PROACT prior to May 1st, they will begin the new pricing agreement on May 1st, is normally supposed to start on June 1st, which would represent a $45,000 savings of May.
Anyone else? Mr. Forsythe.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly support it, Joe. We met with them. We talked at length. No disruption. $500,000 a year for 3 years coming. It's a no-brainer to me, so. Good job.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No opposed, it's carried. Ms. Arquette?
Yes, I would like to introduce a resolution calling on the federal government to take all necessary measures to ensure that our healthcare workers and first responders receive the needed PPE. And I'll read the resolution to you. It says, whereas St. Lawrence County is facing a public health crisis unlike any other in recent memory, and whereas the COVID-19 pandemic is putting stress on public and private healthcare systems that are already stretched very thin, and whereas St. Lawrence County is seeing a spike in COVID-19 cases, it is taking unprecedented steps at slowing down the rate of infections. And whereas our healthcare workers and our first responders are on the front lines of this pandemic and need personal protective equipment, which are in short supply. And whereas healthcare workers are putting themselves in personal danger while providing a life-saving service. And whereas healthcare workers deserve the very best for our public dollars. So now, therefore, it be resolved that the St. Lawrence County Board of Legislators hereby register its strongest possible support for healthcare workers and first responders who are doing their best every day. And be it further resolved that the Board of Legislators hereby calls on the federal government to take every measure that workers get the PPE that they so sorely need to protect their patients and themselves, including instituting a national supply chain, emptying the federal stockpile, banning exports of PPE already in the US, and using the Defense Production Act to require additional manufacturing. And be it further resolved that these workers and their facilities must receive the funding they need now and in the future so that we can handle any public health issue that may come our way.
Is there a second? By Mr. Burke. Any discussion on the resolution? Ms. Curran?
So when I sit in my daily meetings, we talk about the fact that we've ordered a certain amount of PPE from the state, and we're told they have PPE, but this is the portion of it that they're going to allocate to us given our current circumstances. So we've been getting about 10 to 15% of what we order. And many places have PPE enough. Some of the places don't. But I think that instead of trying to pass this off to the Fed and making it all their fault that we don't have the things that we need, we should look first at our own government and acknowledge that we weren't prepared and that the federal stockpile is pretty well empty too. So we had better look to how we're going to do this in the state and getting a better share of what's in the state instead of just turfing it upstream.
Anyone else? Mr. Burke?
Rita, are you suggesting an amendment to include the state in this resolution?
Yes, actually, I would say that the state, we have to acknowledge the chain of command, John, in this too, right? Because we're not getting all of our orders filled at the state level. We're being told that it's being triaged based on our need. So when the federal government does give stuff to New York State, it doesn't deliver it to St. Lawrence County. It delivers it to the state of New York. And then it's actually the state of New York that is deciding how much we get. And is Dr. Williams still kicking around someplace here? Because he's in on these calls. Literally, whatever comes to the state is triaged to us. So our lack of this in St. Lawrence County, Nancy, isn't a federal lack of show up. It is how we're being triaged and what we're being handed by the state.
If you're going to make that an amendment, would you
It's
phrase
really
it
long.
accordingly?
I'm sorry, it's really long. I just
That's all
don't
right.
think that this resolution is really practical, or, it's sort of political. You're kind of trying to hand it up the thing, Nance.
No, can I speak to this?
No,
Sure,
not yet.
we talked about this
What?
earlier.
I'm asking you, Mr. Burke asked you if you were going to offer an amendment, and I think you responded in the affirmative. Are you offering an amendment?
Yes, I think we need to amend this to somehow recognize that the PPE that comes from the state is only a percentage, recognizing that the PPE that comes from the state level is only a percentage of what we need. Because we can't just pass an amendment that blames somebody else when there's truly a much bigger chain of command.
So you want to include the state of New York in that they should be supplying our needs consistent with what our needs are.
Yes.
Is there a second to the amendment?
Thank you, John.
Seeing none?
No, John just seconded it.
Nobody seconded.
I did.
Did you
Joe.
second it, John?
Yeah, I did, Joe. Yeah.
Okay, forgive me, seconded by John. Is there any discussion as to the amended resolution? Or the amendment to the resolution? Mr. Akers?
I think the resolution was well-meaning, but it's also hugely political. It's much what the people on the other side have been demanding that the president do. And I think that actually Mr. Curran is 100% correct in that we need to look within ourselves. First of all, take care of our needs and be prepared locally, and then on the state level. We just fought off, or well, it's not ended yet, where we had the governor talking about actually sending the National Guard, and it still may happen yet with our ventilators. So I think many of the things that have taken place, I really don't want the federal government. I mean, look at with the CDC and the FDA. They didn't approve in the early stages of this, of actually approving the actual testing mechanisms, especially like the swabs, putting up your nose. They delayed. The whole bureaucracy is so slow. And then actually, the thing about industry has responded, and you see where President Trump finally went after 3M. But you also realize that 3M has factories all over the world, and they came back, they fired back as far as, well, this disrupts the supply to other countries, and then you get a tit for tat. So I think that how this can be addressed best is on our local and our state level. And certainly the federal is overall, and then they have a supply, and they can send that, maybe we send a hospital ship to New York City. So I'm not in favor of the amendment. I'm not in favor of the resolution, and I won't support it.
Anyone else? Mr. Forsythe?
Yeah, I can't see the resolution. I don't have a printout, and it came in late this afternoon, as far as I know. Am I correct in that, or? Am I correct with that? Okay.
Yes.
If I was going to support anything along those lines, and I support our health professionals wholeheartedly. I think they should have all the PPEs in the world, but on the same token, I think they should have all the ventilators they need too. So if we're going to talk about this, we ought to add ventilators into this. If ventilators are added into this endorsement or this resolution, then I would probably support it, with the state included. But if it's just PPE, personal protection, no. I missed all the conversation from Dr. Williams, and I'm kind of remiss at it. But my main concern is those ventilators. And if they leave, they won't come back. And we have the fastest growing population of coronavirus, one of the highest in the state now. And if my family resident or member becomes sick, you bet darn well I'm going to want a ventilator as quick as I can get one. And I don't want to have to drive to New York to go get it. So I think it's well intended, but I think there's a lot more that could be included. So as is, I won't support it. Thanks.
Is there anyone else that hasn't spoken yet? We'll go to Mr.
Chairman.
Burns. Who was it that just said that?
Chairman Lightfoot.
Mr. Dinish.
Thank you. I guess I'm a little bit beside myself. I gave the prayer not 2 hours ago, and one of the things that was part of the prayer, I just want to remind everyone, was that I asked to let us cast aside politics so we're able to achieve the best outcome for all the people of the nation. I don't care if it's politics at the state level, at the federal level. The thing that we need to be concerned about is our people, the people that are on the front lines. And that was, if you remember, that was also part of the prayer. It's not the federal government's fault. It's not the state's fault. I don't think it's anybody's fault. It really doesn't matter who. We can spend all day long trying to figure out who's to blame for this. The fact is that we need to get PPE to our first responders, the people that are on the front lines. We need to keep our ventilators. We're beating the hell out of this for nothing. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Burke.
To your point, Larry, that's exactly what the resolution called for, is to assure that the personal protective equipment that our first responders and healthcare workers need to encourage, originally it was the federal government, but then it was the state was included in that. As far as I'm concerned, I'd be willing to add anybody that could get us that equipment, any other entity. And I saw the resolution as a resolution of support for our healthcare workers and our first responders. To be honest, I didn't see a political agenda here, and again, adding the state and anybody else that you can think of add is fine with. I think we're all on the same page as wanting to make sure the people that are out there on the front lines are protected. Again, I don't see it as political, especially with Rita's amendment, and I'm wholeheartedly in favor of it.
Mr. Perkins.
Yes, I didn't get to see the resolution myself as it was late, but it does sound like it's headed in the right direction. And I agree with Dave. I think we should add New York State to that and the ventilators. I would make an amendment to add New York State and to the resolution and include the ventilators to keep them
We have
here.
the amendment for New York State. We have the amendment made for New York State.
Yeah, New York State is in the amendment.
Okay.
Okay, so what do you want to do with that? Ventilators?
Well, I
I'd
guess
second
I would
One at a
support
time.
it if I would support it if it was amended with, in the amendment, if it was amended to include the ventilators to be left here. To not be
Ms.
taken.
Curran, would you consider that a friendly amendment to your amendment?
I could live with that.
Okay. Is that passable? I'm going on new ground here.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Just
Go ahead,
the wording of it, it's just a suggestion, is to put it to the decision of our local hospitals to make that decision. If they feel that they can let a ventilator go, fine, I'm all for that. But I think it should be their discretion, not someone else dictating or anyone else dictating. But that's my thought. Leave it to the discretion of the hospital.
Amend the amendment to the original resolution. Let's get something that we can take a look at and make sense out of and go from there. Rita, can you incorporate what Mr. Forsythe is asking for in your amendment?
I would say, let me get to the paragraph where I inserted it. I'm sorry.
Joe, Mr. Burke was the second, so he'll have to second her
Yeah.
friendly amendment.
The first now therefore it be resolved, I think is where you'd want to put the state in.
Also calling on the state to send us the proper amount of PPE that we need and leave us the ventilators that we have here in our county.
At our discretion.
Well, there's some really good data, Dave, that says that splitting those ventilators is a bad idea. The more we study this virus, the more we think that it's kind of like HIV. It's like a viral load issue. So if Nicole has a bunch of this virus in her lungs and Nancy has very few, we combine their ventilators. Nancy is actually making, Nicole is actually making Nancy sicker. So I don't want to get to the ventilator splitting. We have, very few ventilators. I hate to see
That's
any of
fine.
them.
All right. Yep. No, that's good. I'll leave that to you.
Mr. Akers.
It's my suggestion. I don't support the resolution as written, and I don't think it's fair that the board, I got a chance just briefly to look at it before tonight's meeting. I think it would be helpful that this resolution be withdrawn. We could address it in operations or services and have time to actually acknowledge the problems that we have with it. We want to include the state. We want to include the ventilators. I realize it may be late, but I mean, in another week, we'll be meeting with operations. Is that not correct, Mr. Chairman? The operations, or is it services?
We have an open Monday, next Monday.
We're open next Monday, yeah.
So, I mean, there is that part of it. I can't support it as is. I definitely do not want the federal government messing around with the supply chain. I don't want them trying to be running Walmart. So there's pieces in there that I can't support, even with the amendments. But I thought Ms. Arquette's had her hand up for quite some time. If you would acknowledge her, Mr. Lightfoot, maybe she has a suggestion.
I've seen her with her hand up, and I had to acknowledge people who haven't spoken yet. So go ahead, Nancy.
Well, first, I'd like to say that the intention of this resolution certainly wasn't to be political. This was brought together working with 1199 SEIU, which represents hospital workers. This is an initiative that they've been working on to try to petition the federal government for all states, not just New York State. All states are being affected by COVID. And so this is not to cast blame. This is to help the hospital workers like 1199 SEIU, like NISNA, who are working every day on the front lines, okay? I will be happy to withdraw the resolution because I think that we're talking about amendments on an executive order that hasn't been released. So I would certainly like to be able to circulate the executive order once it is released so that everyone has the language before any amendments are made.
So now we've got a resolution on the table that has been seconded, that the author of the resolution wishes to withdraw. Is there any issue with that, with you, Mr. Burke, who seconded it, with her withdrawing her resolution?
Well, no, I don't have a problem withdrawing it. No, I don't have a problem.
All right. Do we have to address the amendments?
I need to withdraw.
Everybody needs to withdraw.
Okay.
I will withdraw
with
my
respect to
amendment.
the amendments, are you willing to withdraw the amendments, Ms. Curran?
Yes.
And who seconded?
Mr. Burke.
Mr. Burke, you seconded that? Will you withdraw your second? All right.
Yes, I'll withdraw.
Thank you, John. So Nancy, just to be clear, you're withdrawing it and period, end of story.
Yes, but as I will reintroduce at a later time.
All right, thank you very much. County Administrator's report.
Couple of updates for you this evening. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and the Child Advocacy Center of Northern New York is planting pinwheels. You might have started to see these around the county. They are planted as seeds of hope, and they've planted them in our courtyard between the courthouse and the surrogate building. There are 279 to represent the 2019 representation in the Tri-County area of 766 cases that the Child Advocacy Center worked on. So we'll share a picture with you on another day. I wanted you to know, in case you hear about that, where those came from. They will also collect them in May. Next, I wanted to mention to you that some have expressed an interest in holding a Bring Your Child to Work Day. And certainly with the situation we're in now, the national recognition of that is April 23rd. So I'd like to bring that to your attention some other month to delay that, but also look at how we might implement that in the county. Wanted to let you know that tomorrow we're going to revisit the transportation discussion with public transit. We have talked with them and monitored the situation a couple of times now. We did include at our last discussion a conversation with the college presidents. We're going to talk tomorrow again with just transportation to determine if at this time we should suspend transit. With the understanding that our Trailways service has been suspended. Some of our neighboring counties have also suspended their service. We would like to do that though with at least a couple of days notice. Our ridership has dropped precipitously, perhaps about 3/4. We'll check that number again, but allow them time to make necessary accommodations to get the essentials before we suspend service. So we're going to talk tomorrow afternoon, and I would send you an update on that. We would have to request authorization of the Department of Health, as at this time that is designated an essential service. So I'll get back to you once we have an opportunity to review that again. Also, going back just for a moment to the COVID discussion, the state has designated the county attorney, the sheriff, and myself as the enforcement component associated with some of the discussions we had early in the meeting. And they're sharing out the complaints that they're receiving so that action can be taken, communication can be started, with the intent that most, if not everyone, has good intentions about social distancing and the appropriate actions at this time. We, at our first receipt of information, have only 2 organizations we need to speak to. We're going to format some language that we can discuss and send off to those organizations to begin that discussion. Also wanted to mention to you that we are going to renew the state of emergency request. That would extend from April 15th to May 14th, and we'll also request State Department of Health approval prior to that. We have endeavored to partner with BOCES as a result of having many of our workforce working from home, and they have loaned us, I believe, almost 35 to 40 computers that we are repurposing to provide to our staff at home. So as many of you know, the BOCES school districts have moved over to Chromebook environments. So that freed up some of their laptops. And I worked with Tom Burns to provide some of those to get more folks working. At this time, there's approximately 15% of our 806 positions that we're looking to make sure either the duties that they hold and keep for us, we're repurposing some of the functions between transportation, highway, helping out at Office for the Aging. We're talking about getting some backup services with social services and probation to help out at public health. So we're very actively trying to address the needs of our departments while many folks are at home. So if you have any questions on that, please let me know. And lastly, I just wanted to mention that the 14th resolution tonight that you adopted recognizes April as National Public Health Week, April 6th through the 12th. With your permission, I'd like to utilize some of the employee recognition funds to do something for public health this week. As many of you know, they are working, as Dana indicated tonight, 7 days a week on a variety of shifts, and I couldn't think of a better use for those funds. So whether it's to buy them lunch or to do something nice to recognize their ongoing efforts. Questions?
Mr. Akers.
Oh, absolutely. I think that would be important. I mean, they're cooped up there in the Board of Legislators office, the staff and there. I think that you will be including the EOC also, Ruth. On the travel transportation, I am definitely not in favor of renewing transportation to the campuses. It's the young people that don't feel that they're vulnerable. I mean, our first 4 or 5 cases there, they did not have the symptoms. And, you know, if you don't have the symptoms that you feel that you are free to travel around, and particularly it's one thing if they've got to walk downtown or whatever, it's another thing if they're on our buses in a closed environment. So I'm based on the communications and how the lack of communications that the colleges made us aware of those students and actually the safety part of it, I would not restart the transportation to any of those college campuses.
Anything else? Move on to committee reports. Any committee reports? Seeing none, old or new business? Any old or any new business? Mr. Akers.
I do have some new business. What we have going through the dairy industry now is really unprecedented. Everybody, when the COVID virus still hit here, people went to the supermarkets and they bought gallons and gallons of milk, and stores were actually restricting the sales of it. So in the co-op that I used to belong to, they actually handled about 800 tractor trailer loads a day, and that's from Maine down into Pennsylvania, pretty much to the Northeast. There are many other co-ops, but this co-op DFA is actually one of the larger ones. So what happened is they've had to pull 350 or 60 loads away from cheese and manufacturing yogurt and ice cream plants to supply the fluid milk to refill up the supply chain. So what's happened, so they met the needs of the grocery stores. And so when they went to return those 300 loads back down to the yogurt and cheese and ice cream places, because of the lack of restaurant trade and people not going out and shopping and or restricting their purchases, all of a sudden, and it's not just here in the Northeast, we have a glut of milk. And so we're actually, what is being dumped is 100 trailer loads a day here in the Northeast. And that's about 6,500 gallons per day per truck. So we multiplied that by 100. So the local smaller co-op, Agrimart, which is primarily New York, I don't think they go into Pennsylvania, but New Hampshire and some in Vermont, has a resolution, or I'd like us to support a resolution, but the resolution wants to set prices and then actually set a very high price. And I think in general, my reaction and to other individuals that I talk to that are kind of in the know is that it's really early. They're asking, I think Mark Aiken sent the letter that from the general manager for Agrimart was asking politicians to support. It's really kind of early in the CARES program, the 2 trillion CARES program. There will be provisions in there. And I think rather than us coming out, we don't have a resolution tonight, rather than us coming out and supporting a resolution, we need to really wait and see what happens this time on the national level across. It's not just happening in the Northeast, it's all across. My wife is the shopper. She has noticed, and she said that in Kinney, she got a call from a friend that in Kinney's they were selling milk for $1 for a half a gallon. And what it is what's happened is the expiration dates. And my wife was in Walmart and a local store here, and all the milk was actually expiring on April 8th, and the latest that she could find is April 11th. So I think probably what you're going to see is that Walmart and other large grocery stores will probably be dumping that milk, and they'll be resupplying. So that'll take some of it apart, solve some of the problem. The bigger problem is the restaurant trade. So about 25 to 30% of the milk that we produce here in the Northeast is used in the restaurants. So that business is not coming back. So it will not come back until we're cleared to go to our restaurants. So you'll be hearing from your neighbors and other constituents. It is a real problem. And I think, we're going to, in this case, we do not have any floors, contrary to most people think that we're subsidized heavily. There is no floor to the price. So farmers will probably be in the single digits, $8, $9 per hundredweight of milk. But I do believe that there will be some between that CARES program and probably a national program to get these farmers the needed money that they need to continue the business. But for sure, there is huge stress in St. Lawrence County and all over the Northeast with this milk being dumped. They are being paid for it, but still, when you add 25%, which used to go to restaurants, and you put that in the supply, which the supply was already excessive, it's going to crash prices. So that's just a heads up. I just wanted to pass that on in respect for Mark Akins. I had been sent the resolution by the local board director, Blake Genevieve, and so I was privy to it, and Ruth got it sent to her by Mark Akins. So just to make you aware. So hold on tight. Thank you.
Anyone else? Rita?
Kevin, this is just can I ask Kevin a question about that?
Sure, go ahead.
Instead of dumping the milk down the drain, wouldn't we be better off to process it and give it away to people that are, on social services that don't have enough food during this time anyways?
So certainly. So what I'm saying is that the production facilities are full. So all the plants that are opening, and many plants, particularly in Wisconsin, that made specialty cheeses, and actually there's problems with COVID in their employees and stuff. So some smaller plants made the decision to shut right down. So, there's no place for this milk to go. There's no place that's actually processing it. And that's, if there was, it would be made into dry powder or something like that. All the market, the whole supply chain is right full to the brim. And so basically it's being stored in, or being collected and measured. Quality samples are being taken. The farmers are being compensated, and then they may be driving around back or to a neighbor's and putting it in a storage facility. So I understand, the idea of it, but it can't be produced. So certainly milk beyond that expiration date is still good. I'm hoping that the Walmarts, and much like Kinney's selling it for $1 for a half gallon, that they'll be able to move that product to some food centers, like the Syracuse, the Central New York foods hub there. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Yep.
Any other old or new business? One thing that I'd like to bring out is I sent an email out, I think it was on Friday, that I was going to bring forward a resolution addressing the governor's plan to deploy the National Guard to come to the northern counties, all of the state counties, I guess, and under the threat of rounding up their ventilators and the PPE stores that were not being used. It's my understanding, and I've been told, that governor has gotten a message from the county executives, the county administrators, the county chairman, and anybody else that's got a typewriter or a telephone, that this is a bad idea. He has come to the conclusion, I do believe, that it was a bad idea, and is now in a much more accommodating mood. He is, I am told, dealing with the hospitals to get them to tell him what they are able to provide to him to take downstate, as opposed to him just writing out exactly what he needs. I need so many ventilators, so many percent of the ventilators, whatever. So the resolution that I would have brought would have not been favorable to the governor, because the governor has had a turnaround and has decided to handle this in a different way, and in fact has not yet signed an executive order with respect to seizing any of this equipment or ordering the National Guard to seize it. I decided, after consulting with the medical people and the public health people here in the county, and with our elected representatives in Albany and in DC not to bring the resolution forward. But I wanted to let you know that after having sent something out that tells you I was going to do something. So if anybody wants to comment on it, go ahead. If not, we'll move right along to a need for executive session. I would, for litigation, negotiations, personnel and appointments. Is there a motion to go into executive session by Mr. Akers, second by Mr. Perkins and Mr. Forsythe? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.